I'm Andrew Hall, and this is Dead Hand Radio. My guest for this episode is Jeremy McGowan. He's well known in the UFO community as a researcher, experiencer, investigator, and activist. He drives the only known mobile UFO tracking vehicle with an onboard SkyHub that I know of, anyway, and has recently been accepted into the ranks of the SCU, or the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. It's been a few months since Jeremy's last appearance on this podcast, and a lot has happened since then. We're going to get an update on what he's been up to, and then we'll talk about the state of the UFO Disclosure Movement. Welcome back to Dead End Radio, Jeremy.
Hey, glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, man. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show, and always interesting to talk with you, whether we're on a podcast or face to face or otherwise. Um, so, just for those who may not know who you are, I mean, you're pretty well known already in the community, but there's always new members coming into the community, and there's people that don't know who you are. Um, give a really quick overview of how you got involved in the UFO topic, and
Yeah,
then we'll point people to your website.
yeah, for sure. I was in the military, and back in 1995, I was assigned to a mission, a one of those secret squirrel missions, and I was deployed to the country of Jordan. And through a series of events that occurred while I was on deployment, I witnessed something that defied any logical explanation or any explanation on my limited knowledge of physics. Um, and Over the course of about 24 years, I just kind of didn't really think about it much until I had happenstance to watch an episode of Unidentified Inside America's UFO Investigation, which triggered all the memories that I'd had from about 24 years prior to that. Went on Reddit to try to see if the Reddit internet detectives could help me figure some stuff out, and they pointed me back to the TV show and encouraged me to write an email to the TV show, which I did. And about 6 or 8 weeks later, I get a call from the producer of A&E asking me if I wanted to go on camera and tell the story on camera. And I ended up on season 2, episode 3, entitled UFOs and Nukes. So ever since then, I've kind of been involved in hopefully managing expectations and kind of on my own path for my personal version of disclosure.
That's a really good brief overview. But if anybody wants to find out more about you, you've also done quite a few um, interviews on other podcasts. And I'm sharing that your website on screen here so people can take a look at it. And as I'm scrolling through these, if you want to just name some of the other shows that you've been on.
Yeah, I think most of the shows that I've been on are fairly well known here. Christina Gomez is up there in the upper left hand corner. She's one of the newest ones. That UFO podcast with Andrew McGrillen. I Believe in Humans with Justin and Dustin. Fearscape Paranormal with forgive my, I am horrible with names. I cannot remember names. The Esoteric Book Club with Mr. Rutledge, and obviously Somewhere in the Skies with Andrew Sprague. So it's been kind of an interesting
Brian Sprague.
Sprague. Yeah, sorry. It's been kind of an interesting ride, man. I've been kind of bounced all over the map with the podcasts out there, and obviously Luis Jimenez in the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Who big shout out for him doing the Big Phone Home push, where we're all reaching out to Congress and trying to get Congress to provide disclosure.
Absolutely. And we're going to get into that a little bit more later on in this program. But yeah, you've been making the rounds quite a bit, and it's pretty cool that the people within the UFO community that do have platforms have pretty much embraced you And and since then, um, you've had quite a few things unfold uh, as far as your own journey and your own um, interest in the topic. But before we get into really talking about, since we last talked, what's transpired um, in your career, and I understand that you have certain NDAs in place that prohibit you from talking about certain things. Um, but one thing I wanted to ask you is, have you ever encountered through your work or otherwise any technology that is human made that is anywhere comparable to what you witnessed during the crate in the desert incident is what it's now known as.
It's a good question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that one. Um, that would be both a yes and a no and a kind of. Like you said, I am very restricted in what I can talk about. For those who don't know, I work for a prolific defense contractor who handles, manages, repairs, flies, builds, tests a lot of the drone aircraft that our military and intelligence agencies use. So, if it is something that I am working on, um, obviously I can't talk about that at all. Um, I've seen in my line of work, I've seen things that can do part of what I've seen in Jordan. Um, but the defining characteristic of my sighting in Jordan was the fact that this thing, whatever it was able to traverse the horizon from one horizon to the other in under 2 seconds with a 90-degree turn in the middle of that, and it would repeat over and over and over again. Um, and to directly answer your question, there is absolutely nothing that I have seen, that I have worked on or been privy to or otherwise known about that has the ability to do a 90-degree turn without any depreciation in speed or without an arc or a radius to its flight path.
And that was when you witnessed it. That was what, almost 25 years ago.
Yeah, that was in 1995.
Yeah,
It was late 1995, but that was a long time ago.
right. And so you do post interesting tweets on Twitter. I know people. Um, at least for me, I see what you're posting, and I think I really would like to know what Jeremy knows that he's not telling everybody. Um, but total 100% due respect to your NDAs. I don't want to even tread closely uh, to getting into that territory.
Yeah, what I'll say about that is, you look at some of the posts that I've put out and say the last 96 hours, the last 4 or 5 days on Twitter, and I've posted about the X-47B, the X-47C. I've posted about the Aguila. I've posted about all sorts of military drones, whether they're combat drones, UCAVs, or whether they're ISR type of drones, surveillance types. I've posted a lot of them. Uh, and every single one of these that I have posted has been developed years ago and released to the public knowledge, or the public zeitgeist, I guess, within the last few years. So there's nothing that I'm putting out there that is classified. Everything that I'm finding is and posting is a Google search, but I'm searching with intent. But everything that I'm posting has capabilities or flight characteristics or visual signatures or heat signatures of certain things that are being routinely or prevalently seen and reported as UAP. And considering that all of these things that I'm posting are a decade or so old, if not older, then you have to think what we have now that is flying in our skies, and what we can or can't do today. So I'm I'm trying to give the best hints possible, and to caveat that, I have said on Twitter probably close to 20 times now that, and people take me to task for this because I put out an alternative explanation for something that somebody says this is a UAP. Whether it's filmed by Navy personnel or whether it's filmed by Air Force personnel or civilians, somebody is claiming that it's a UAP. So what I'm doing is I'm offering an alternative explanation in the hopes that it encourages people to apply a little bit of critical thinking to what they're doing. And I am being taken to task for that. I am being, my DMs are filling up with people just yelling and screaming at me. But in none of these situations am I straight up saying that is not a UAP. And this is what it is. I am simply offering an alternative possibility. And like I said, I've said it on Twitter about 20 times. Not everything is a UAP, but not everything isn't a UAP.
It's a good point. It is a good point, and what you said, I think that is most important, is that people need to approach this with a logical mindset. You have to think, you have to look at this with the same rigor as an investigator and assume that it is not what you want it to be, and look at all the data and look at all the facts. And if you don't have that available, then you cannot make any conclusions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I
You
mean, you
can,
have to look at this like a defense attorney. You may know that your client is guilty as hell, but you've got to defend him to the death and try to find a way to prove him innocent. Um, so, regardless of what your personal beliefs are, you need to find that defining characteristic that says, "Hey, this guy is innocent. Holy shit, I was wrong."
and so let's uh, let's step off of that topic a little bit and go into some of the updates, because we'll get back to
Sure.
more of that in a little bit, because that's really an interesting line of discussion. But I want to get some updates from since the last time you and I talked until we're where we're at now,
Hmm.
and then let's start with last time you and I talked on the record was, and you'll have to forgive me if I try to tread into some areas that you've already talked about on other podcasts. Unfortunately, I haven't had time to watch all your podcasts, but if I do go into those areas, you can just touch on it briefly and then refer listeners over to those other podcasts for more information if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
would like to
Absolutely.
do that, just for the sake of time. But you and Sean Cahill were heading out to a SkyHub adventure with the Osiris, and that's the last time we talked officially. Um, you had some technical difficulties with the unit and ended up uh, having to do a rebuild on it. Is that correct?
Well, if you consider technical difficulties, the unit basically exploding in the back end of the vehicle and bursting into flames, then yeah, let's go with technical difficulties. Um, SkyHub was never designed to be mobile. So the pieces and the parts that are recommended or sourced to put the SkyHub together, they're not ruggedized per se because it was supposed to be a static unit. And here I am that's put it in the back of a 22-year-old Land Rover with beefed up suspension and hard shocks and big tires, and I'm going through driving through Wyoming, and at the time I'm basically chasing Lou Elizondo in his pickup truck down a dirt road full of ruts and potholes and everything else. And my director of photography for this film project was in the back seat, Dustin Hoyer, and we had hit a bump so hard that he had bounced his head off the ceiling and he had bit his tongue, and blood was coming out of his
Wow.
mouth because he bit his tongue so hard. And shortly after that, my foot's still on the gas pedal, but we hear this series of pops. It sounds almost like a suppressed gunfire from the back of the truck, and we're like, "What the is that?" And Sean turns around and says, "Hey, your red box is glowing." And, and next thing you know, the cab of the vehicle is filling up with the smell of burnt plastic and everything. And I pull off the side of the road and jump out. I even forget to put it up in park, and the car starts moving. I jump back in, put it in park, and run around the vehicle, open up the tailgate, and find that the SkyHub is on fire. So that required a small little redesign.
Yeah. So you've since then you been able to rebuild it and get it back up into operational status?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
everything is back. We what I did is I went to Home Depot and I got a steel, one of those diamond steel toolboxes, a giant contractor's toolbox, and gutted it and rebuilt the Sky Hub inside of that and hardened it and may have mounted a fire extinguisher on the back of the car this time.
That's a good idea. um, so and okay, so you've also started up your own YouTube channel. Let's talk a little bit about that. What are your what's your vision for the YouTube channel? How often do you plan on posting new content?
You know, the okay, so the YouTube channel is my keeping a promise to myself and to everybody else that I've made the promise to. Um, for lack of a better way of saying things, for those who don't know, my vehicle, the Osiris, is technologically capable of, in theory, finding signatures of suspected UAP. Um, so and capturing the data. I'm huge on data being paired with optical or video evidence because I don't think a picture or a video by itself without corresponding data is worth a damn. So my vehicle, the Osiris, is designed to be able to capture ancillary data with the opticals, with the optics. So I made a promise to myself, and I made a promise to everybody at the same time that whenever I would capture something, I would give it to the world. I'm not going to sit on it. I'm not going to try to sell it. I'm not going to monetize it in any way, shape, or form. I am going to try to give it away so that the academics and the scientific community can study this. Um, and my YouTube channel is my personal outlet to be able to push this this data out there. So far, I've not captured anything, or I've not captured anything that's worthwhile putting up there. I've got birds and planes and drones and things like that, but there's nothing that's been the giant red question mark that that's requiring further study on it. So my YouTube channel is there, and I don't have a set pattern or a set time to be able to put things out. I'm not the guy that's creating content and releasing it at 6 p.m. every Thursday. Um, but
Every Monday, that is.
but I am the guy that's got a YouTube channel that when I find something, it will go out there.
Awesome. Well, the one thing that you said was, or that you alluded to, and it made me realize that the UFO story is a compelling story, but at the core of it, it's a human story. It's
Hmm.
about people who are searching for truth, for answers, and that story in and of itself is an interesting and compelling story. So by you sharing that story with people on your YouTube channel, um, you're sharing that experience that a lot of people who want these answers don't have the ability or capability of going out there and doing. So hats off to you for doing that, man.
I appreciate that. It's I've always both chastised and defended people that make money off of this. If I could make money doing this, paying my mortgage and paying my bills, and doing this full time, I absolutely would. Um, as long as I could ensure the integrity of the science and ensure the integrity of the data without any sensationalism. But this is currently a non-paid hobby. So I'm encouraging everybody to do what I am doing because I'm not going to be able to provide answers to the world. But if the world is doing the exact same thing that I'm doing, then collectively we can figure this out.
Absolutely. And that's the vision, the overarching vision of SkyHub
Yeah.
and what you're doing. And it is in a, to a small degree what I'm trying to do with the podcast. But I'm really more on a personal journey to find answers for myself. I just happen to share the people that I talk with. I share those conversations with anybody who's interested in listening. We have quite a few people in the chat room, and we're
Awesome.
getting some interesting questions. So I'm going to go ahead and throw one out there. Um, are you going to places that are considered hotspots?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I don't deal with people. There are UFO UAP researchers that spend their entire career doing historical investigations and going back in time and interviewing witnesses and digging through archives and things like that. I would gouge my eyes out if I had to do that. Um, I don't deal with people. I'd rather not talk to people. Um, I was a cop for 12 years, and I know that witness testimony is flawed at its very basic level. So I am I designed the Osiris with the specific intent of going out and doing investigations on hotspots because the data is going to be correct. Witness testimony is going to be sketchy.
Yeah, and I think that's cool. That's one thing that sets you apart from like. And I'm not saying anything negative. I have a lot of friends that are in MUFON and they're field investigators. They go out,
Oh yeah.
they do ground searches. They do they check flight records and things like that. They do a lot of research after the fact. But what
Hmm.
you're trying to do is you're trying to get out there and capture this stuff in real time as it's unfolding. You want to be the
Yeah.
witness, but you also want to capture evidence to
I,
back up your witness testimony.
I don't want to be the witness. I want the Osiris to be the witness.
Right.
I want the sensor stack, the data logs, the hard drives, the telemetry. I want all of that to be the witness. I want to be the guy to say that my vehicle was able to capture X, Y, and Z. And my personal experience during that time is going to be completely and totally irrelevant as far as I put it forth. But the data that comes out of what I'm doing, that's what I want to be able to provide to the scientific and academic communities for them to be able to pour over because I'm not smart enough to understand the data that I am myself collecting. It needs to be peer reviewed. It needs to have somebody to analyze it and write a white paper on it and submit it to a scientific journal and have everybody pour over this because what I found might be ball lightning. It might be something completely different. We might find it's a paranormal aspect or an interdimensional aspect or a nuts and bolts aspect or a natural aspect. And I'm not the guy to say what it is that the data is showing. I'm just the guy that happens to have the equipment to be able to provide that data.
Definitely. And the more people that are doing what you're doing, the more data we have in the data pool for the scientists to study and analyze and maybe draw some conclusions that get us closer to some answers.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
Very cool. And I just want to again say thank you to all the people in the chat that are posting. It's really cool to see you guys out there actively discussing the topics with us.
Yeah,
If
I just saw a thing. Carl Anderson just poked up. This is why I keep turning my head this way because I got a second monitor. I'm not
that's
ignoring
it.
you. I'm watching watching the comments come across. But
No
Carl,
problem.
you got it up on the screen. Not UFO hunting, data hunting. Yes, taking a step further, truth hunting. I don't care what the outcome is as long as the outcome is real.
And John Poe has a question about Colonel Alexander, which we're going to get to a little bit later in the discussion.
Yep.
So we're holding that until a little bit further down the road when we start talking about the state of disclosure. Um, but let's fast forward a little bit and get caught up to a couple of other things. Um, you There was an article featured about you and the Osiris in Shadows of Your Mind magazine.
Yes.
Great article. I highly recommend everybody go get that free magazine and read it from cover to cover because it's chock full of interesting information. But specifically, the last issue has a feature about Jeremy and the Osiris. Ton of great information.
That was a fun interview too. That was the first time I've ever appeared in a magazine. The car looks great in the photos. Unfortunately, looking at myself in the pictures, I realize that I'm getting about as wide as the car, so I need to tone down on the cheeseburgers. But that is a seriously well produced piece of media.
It is very, very, very well produced. And you, as I mentioned in the intro, you were recently accepted into the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies.
Yes, the SCU, which is explorescu.org, the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, which is a very, very strict data only scientific interpretation, peer reviewed association of thinkers that look at what is happening in the world today and sit down and analyze it and come up with explanations. And the explanations are not, it's not a debunking site. Let's put it that way. It is for example, the report that they put out on the Nimitz encounters. They break down the math and show how fast these objects were traveling based on, the radar signatures and things like that. And we've recently put out a press release on the letter that we sent to Congress demanding access and transparency into what's happening in our skies.
Yes, and we'll get to that a little bit later as well because I think that's a kind of a bombshell of a press release because, well, for many reasons, but we'll get into that a little bit later. And as far as the SCU is concerned, I would encourage everybody to go check out that. In fact, I do in most episodes. I encourage everybody to go check out that website and look up the Aguadilla incident. That that incident, in my mind, is even more intriguing than the Tic Tac incident.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, and it's more intriguing for a couple different reasons. It's a clearer picture. We have a much longer video. We have background on the video that shows altitude and the size and the speed and the directionality of the object. We can see what it's passing over. We can see everything that we can't in the Nimitz encounters, and the video is rife with data. Even if we don't have the telemetry, we have an exceptional amount of data that is coming from that video.
Agreed. Yeah, and it's an easy read. The interesting thing about that site is, these are academics and people in the scientific community. Normally, those papers that get pushed out by those within those communities are really hard to read, but they make a concerted effort to make that stuff easily consumable by the general public.
Yes.
And I can attest to that. I'm not a very good reader. I'm a good reader, but I'm a slow reader. And man, I gobbled up that report within a few minutes.
Yeah.
It's just a really interesting report, and
Yeah,
that's what
I
these
won't
guys are trying
pretend
to
to understand the math.
do. Yeah,
I can't add two without looking at my fingers, but the way that the SU breaks down the math and the trajectories and the calculations and the triangulations and the speed and the distances, it's being peer reviewed or has been peer reviewed. It's a fantastic. investigation. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, there was one question I want to go back to, Andrew, if you don't mind. Um, Anon Emaus said, "Hey guys, Jeremy, will you be using any frequencies to try and draw in the phenomena?" And that is one thing that I am absolutely adamant about. I don't want to set myself up as just passively recording and hoping for something to happen. I don't want to drive to Sedona or to ranches in Utah or wherever in the hopes of capturing something. I want to poke it. I want to throw rocks at it and I want to try to get its attention. So, yes, there is a variety of things that are being incorporated into the Osiris that are designed to elicit a response.
Yeah. I posted the wrong post. So disregard that last post. I don't even know what it said. But yeah, if I don't get to your questions, guys, just keep posting them so that they're at the bottom, and I'll eventually get to them. Jeremy's doing a pretty good job of monitoring the chat too. So, are you still with SkyHub? Last time we talked, you were really involved with SkyHub. You were helping them with some of their exposure, helping them get the word out. Are you still part of that group?
Yeah, I've taken a little bit of a break simply because at my day job, like I said, I work for a defense contractor. We are just in the final stages of wrapping up a giant proposal that we are hopefully going to win. And my job as a tech writer is to put all of that together. So I've had some seriously extended hours over the past month or so with my day job. But as soon as that project is submitted and we're just waiting on government response, then I'll be able to get back into the SkyHub team a little bit more. But absolutely, I've SkyHub was the first sensor stack that has gone into the Osiris. Currently, the only sensor stack that is in the Osiris. And regardless of me adding different or disparate systems to the Osiris, SkyHub will always be the core, the center, and the initial reason that I got into this.
All right, there we go. And then that brings us to the last thing that we haven't touched on was you met up with you had a face to face with Colonel Alexander,
Oh yes,
and
yes, Colonel John Alexander, founder of NIDS and all things spooky.
and so looks like Luis is here. How you doing, Luis? Thanks for joining us. Um, Trying to keep up with the chats, but you guys are just going at it, man. Thank you guys for being here. So somebody asked her a little bit earlier to talk a little bit about your meeting with Colonel Alexander. I would like to hear more about it. Um, I'm sure there were things that you guys discussed that you can't really talk about publicly. I'd love to be the fly on the wall to hear that conversation. But what can you tell us that you learned from him, and where's his point of view on the disclosure process? Because that's what we're going to get into next.
Yeah. So first off, Colonel Alexander is one of the most approachable people I have ever had the pleasure of speaking to. This guy has seen some stuff. I mean, he is the original man who stares at goats. Um, Psychic warrior, whatever you wanted to call him. Remote viewing. He founded NIDS. He's involved or was involved with Robert Bigelow and just he is the cornerstone of everything about where we are in ufology right now. Um, and when I approached John and asked him for a moment of his time, that moment ended up being about a 3.5 hour long conversation over beers and burgers at a local pub here in Vegas. Um, we talked about everything over that 3.5 hours. We talked about everything at a very high level. We dug into a little bit of detail here and there, but Colonel Alexander is very much into the metaphysical side of things, the consciousness aspect, the ideas that reality is manifestable. if that's a word. It is now. Um, he he doesn't much subscribe to the idea of spacefaring civilizations visiting us and being responsible for the vast majority of what we have, but he is very much convinced that life has come to this planet in various ways, shapes, or forms, but that what we're witnessing now, what's in our skies now, is not necessarily attributable to a civilization that comes from the Pleiades or whatever else. Um, but like I said, we it was a very high level conversation, and I went into it telling John that I wasn't going to record anything, I wasn't taking notes, and the conversation was simply for my own. Man, I keep making noise. It was simply for my own personal edification and understanding of things.
I have to share this question from Luis because it's kind of funny. We're going to take a little step back and talk about the Osiris some more because people
Sure.
really want to hear more about it. But Luis says, talk about what kind of rocks in your bag that you're going to throw at and poke the phenomenon with.
Absolutely, absolutely. So after spending a week up at Lou Elizondo's house during the production of the initial film project that I was involved with, I had a lot of opportunity to sit and speak with Lou, and I had a lot of opportunity to sit back and learn about Jacques Vallée and the ideas that Jacques had put forth that influenced ATIP and UAPTF and ufology in general, even from the military and governmental perspectives. Um, and I learned it may have been common knowledge to a lot of other people, but it wasn't to me. And I found it very interesting to know that the uh, the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Spielberg, back in 1976 or 1977 or whatever it was, um, used Jacques Vallée's ideas and theories as a cornerstone of that movie. The Frenchman in that movie was supposedly playing the part of Jacques Vallée. And one of the underlying ideas that Jacques Vallée had put forth is the ability to attempt communication with the phenomenon through a series of lights and sounds. So, one of the basic things that is being incorporated onto the Osiris is a series of extremely bright, very powerful LEDs that are programmable in, I think they're able to display like 16.8 million different colors or things like that. And I'm working on building a color pattern to be able to display and point upwards when I'm out at location at these hotspots. Some of the other things that I have are a little bit more mundane, blue lasers, green lasers, things of that nature. Uh, I'm going to be acquiring laser microphones, which if there is an object, I am hopeful that being able to bounce a laser microphone off this could potentially provide the first recording of sound from a UAP, or potentially from the inside of a UAP, because laser microphones measure the vibrational patterns, translate that into light wave, which is picked back up by the receiver, and then translate that into sound. Um, there's also discussion right now about being able to try to incorporate repeating broadcasts in a variety of frequencies, beaming things up in a very narrow band, narrow from like a parabolic antenna, a directional antenna is the word I'm looking for. So there's a lot of things that are going to be happening with the Osiris, um, and
Well,
The Osiris is designed to only use the things that work. So if I go out 5 or 6 times and nothing works, it gets a redesign.
yeah. So when you were talking about sounds, first of all, if you could address Anani Mouse, he wants to know if any of these sensors are commercially available. And as far as I know, they are all commercially available, aren't they?
Yeah, there's nothing that I'm using that is proprietary or or classified or anything like that. And to be able to measure gravitational anomalies, it's as simple as a magnetometer. And the Osiris is not currently, but a magnetometer is being evaluated, and we're probably, I don't know, a few weeks away from selection and the beginning of the uh, incorporation of a magnetometer into the Osiris to be able to detect those gravitational anomalies. And the reason that that's important, and it's a very good question, but the reason that's important is if these craft are under a gravitational type of propulsion system, the theory states that there should be a ground based measurement of an anomaly as the craft passes overhead. So you should be able to detect some sort of increase or decrease in the surrounding environment through the magnetometer.
And when you were talking earlier about the sounds, the subsonic sounds that humans can't hear, it reminded me of the work that Linda Zimmerman is doing, and she's a fellow SCU member. She's a scientist on the East Coast that studies the phenomena. And she's written a book about pets, animals that are, and she considers them also witnesses
Hmm.
because they react to the phenomenon just as much, and in some
Sure.
cases sooner than the humans that they're with.
No, they're an early warning detection system for earthquakes
Right.
and things as well.
So what I was going to suggest, if you haven't already considered it, is to maybe consult with her and find out what type of technology would be able to detect that stuff at the dogs and the cats sensitivity levels.
Yeah, having some sort of infrasound measurement device on board would absolutely be a very good idea. I'm kind of surprised I hadn't thought of that.
Cool. Yeah, she's interesting person, and because she's a member of the SU, I figured you guys would be able to um, do some collaboration there. But
Absolutely.
here goes another question from Lou. Do you know of any military equipment filled with a
A
bag of the
bag of the
same
same rock.
rocks?
Um, we have in the military a system called Tempest. Tempest is designed primarily to be incorporated into vehicles, but it is employed in a way to try to find electronic leaks of information. So, a Tempest van, and I will talk about this technology as it was back in the 1990s because I cannot talk about how it is now. But back in the 1990s, the military would drive around Tempest vans around military installations or federal facilities and try to measure the electronic signals coming out of buildings or facilities to see if they could capture information that would be also be able to be captured by the enemy. So we were basically spying on ourselves, trying to capture data to see what was being leaked out of these facilities. Um, those vehicles and that equipment is absolutely similar, if not almost identical, to what the military would be using today for ELINT or MASINT signals intelligence for UAP detection and classification. I, sorry, I had to tap dance a little bit on that one, but yes, there are military sensor stacks that incorporate a lot of the same measurement equipment that the Osiris is.
I think you answered that pretty well. Yeah, without going too much into detail about it and talking about technology that we used to have, people can project forward 20 plus years and think about what we might have today. So let's get back onto the topic of Colonel Alexander because I
Yeah,
wanted to hear some more about him. And like you said, he was one of the original members of the. He helped develop the Stargate, or was he a remote viewer of the Stargate program?
yes.
Okay.
So he was heavily involved from day one. He was also heavily involved with the building of NIDS with Robert Bigelow. Um, he He knows Robert Monroe, or knew Robert Monroe. Obviously, Mr. Monroe is passed. But for those who don't know, Robert Monroe was who designed and developed the Monroe Institute, who came out with the Hemisync gateway experience that the CIA used to help train remote viewers. So Colonel Alexander is basically the man when it comes to this. So his 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 experience and his credentials pretty much speak for him. Not only that, but he also ran. Oh God, I don't remember the exact office, but it was like the physics lab at Los Alamos for the U.S. Army. So I mean, this is not just a guy who deals in metaphysics and the woo woo side of life, but he also deals in very hard science and uh, quantum fields and things like that for research and development for the Army.
Interesting. And if anybody wants us to do some more background on him, his information is all over. Um, but so going back to your meeting with the colonel, um, I guess he lives in Las Vegas. Is that how you
Yeah,
connected
he's like
with him?
5 miles from my house.
That's amazing. So Las Vegas is the place to be, people.
Yeah, I got Robert Bigelow is that way. I've got John Alexander who's that way. There's a lot of folks on UFO Twitter, uh, yourself included, who are here in the Vegas area. So we've uh, we've got we've got people from everywhere that are here in Vegas, and I think probably a good reason for that is we have Creech Air Force Base, we have Nellis, we have Area 51, we have we have the backbone and the infrastructure that has created the the public face of the phenomenon right here in this town.
I think that's well put. There's also several hotspots that you are going to go, and I don't know that we can talk too much about that because of some of your other NDAs, but there's several hotspots that you're going to visit with the Osiris to see if you can find some data.
Yeah, I want to make a point of clarification here. I have always said that I am not making any money on doing any of this, and that statement still holds true. I do not monetize my YouTube channel. I do not sell advertising. I do not get paid to do any of this. That said, I am engaged in the very early stages of a film production that is not a part of what I was doing with Sean Cahill and Lou Elizondo, but I am not getting paid to do it. So this is me appearing and agreeing to participate in the making and the filming of this project, but I am not receiving any money for my appearance. I'm not a paid actor or anything like that. So this is how I am maintaining scientific integrity because the money is not influencing the outcome of the data.
Right on. That said, those hotspots are available to the public, so you're not going to be going on any uh, government facilities to access these. So
No,
anybody out
I
there
just
who,
can't say based on the production and my
yeah,
NDA with the production company, I cannot say where we're going to
right.
go with the production. Now, if I decide that I want to personally drive to Sedona next week, I'm free to do that. But if the production says, "Hey, we're going to take you to X, Y, and Z," and do some filming there, I cannot say that the me and the Osiris are going to be filming at X, Y, and Z location.
Sedona is a hotspot, and it's only a 4-hour drive from what I understand.
Yes.
But that said, if anybody's interested in uncovering those hotspots, I've talked about hotspots in the Las Vegas area on previous episodes. You could do some research on all over the internet, particularly with Preston Dennett. He's a really good researcher, and he's looked at a lot of UFO landings and crash sites, things like that. So there's a lot of information out there you guys can find if you want to go out and do this kind of research on your own. Um,
Lewis, they are feeding me. they're
That's the
they're
bare minimum, isn't it?
they're
Okay.
paying for my gas when I drive somewhere. They're going to put me up in a hotel and they're going to feed me, and that's the extent of the compensation that I get from my participation in this production.
There you go. And it's hopefully it's not like you're going to be like sequestered for weeks on end while they're.
Oh no, I can't be because, like I said, I've got a 9 to 5 job, so I actually have to take my personal vacation days to be able to go do this. So the level of commitment that I am putting forth on this, is I've got family on the East Coast. I live in Las Vegas. This is going to be a year where I am not going to be able to take vacation and go see my family during holidays because I will have burned my vacation to go do this production with for this film. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of things that to be able to maintain integrity, you got to give up.
yeah. So let's jump back onto the remote viewing aspect of it because that's an area that we talked about briefly on our last
Hmm.
communication, our last public communication, I should say.
Yes.
Um, and uh, you were looking into the idea of possibly practicing remote viewing. Do you still intend on doing that for yourself?
Yes.
How do you do that, man? Just a sidebar. I cannot watch the chat and talk to you at the same time, and let alone typing to the people in the chat room. I
Well, remember,
appreciate you guys being here. By the
I'm a
way,
technical writer, so
that's
my
that's
job is at a keyboard and multiple monitors, for hours upon hours a day. So I've developed the ability to talk at one thing and type something completely different and at the same time. But to prove that I'm also full of crap, I've completely forgotten what you just asked me.
so the remote viewing. What is your involvement? What are your intentions with pursuing the remote viewing aspect?
I talked when I was talking to John, Colonel Alexander. I don't want to be as formal as to say, hey, John. When I was talking to Colonel Alexander, I made mention of the fact that I was putting myself through the hemisync and the gateway process, or gateway experience from the Monroe Institute, and he seriously encouraged me to maintain and continue that. He also encouraged me to pick up and start practicing I wrote it down, a specific form of Buddhist meditation that would help with that process. So, yes, my intention is to self study and try to learn this outside of the auspices of official direction and away from any interference by the Monroe, not interference, but any guidance from the Monroe Institute direct. If I have any measurable success, my idea is to then schedule time to actually go through a legitimate process with the Monroe Institute. But I kind of want to test drive it first.
Very cool. So you're using the hemisync method to quiet the mind, get into a state of meditation. Have you tried any targets?
No, I'm not there yet.
Okay.
I'm not there yet. There is a very rigorous process to go through before I haven't even heard those instructions yet on this process. Um, to be able to get into that proper mental state, you have to be able to compartmentalize a lot of things that are floating around in your head. A lot of intrusive thoughts have to go into what Hemisync calls a conversion box, where you imagine a physical three-dimensional representation of a container, and you take your intrusive thoughts and you place them into the container and you seal the lid, um, and you have to train your brain that once those intrusive thoughts or those concerns or those fears are locked up, that now they're never coming out of that box until you decide to open that lid. And I am still working on that because my brain talks to me a whole awful lot.
Oh, that's the downside of being able to multitask. Your brain is multitasking at all times, so it's hard to quiet the mind. This is why I have trouble reading
Yeah.
because I'm always thinking about multiple things at the same time. I would love to try to do remote viewing. I've talked to several remote viewers on the podcast, and it seems like it would be a, a way to time travel. I mean, you could literally time travel or go anywhere you want to at any given time.
Yeah,
Just
and if
like
you
an
God,
interesting.
what was the movie with Nick? Not a movie. It was a TV show with Nick Offerman, where they had a quantum computer that was able to do basically what remote viewing is.
Oh, I hadn't
I
heard of it.
can't remember. It lasted one or two seasons.
Hmm.
Great premise, though. Great premise.
So, anything else about the meeting with Colonel Alexander before we start talking about the disclosure, the state of disclosure?
Not particularly. I mean, there's a lot more that we discussed, but out of a uh, to honor an unspoken gentleman's request, the things that we did discuss in detail, I don't want to go into without his permission.
Very cool. Very cool. And that's one thing I know about you is that you don't violate um, those promises that you make behind the scenes or outside the public eye.
No, not unless they're violated first.
Well, you don't burn the bridges, man. And this is something that we've talked about. There's certain times where it's and not only in regards to um, breaking somebody's trust, but there are times where you don't out somebody for doing something that you disagree with, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I'll be straight up. There has been throughout this process, there has been a tremendous amount of things that I have disagreed with that people have said or done or alluded to, and I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. I mean, if I feel that somebody is posing a danger or blatantly manipulating or lying, and it's done in a way that I have definitive proof, and then I'm not going to risk my personal reputation on it, at that point in time I'll probably not only burn that bridge but nuke the thing. But I'm not there yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and with that in mind, we talked a little bit earlier before the recording started about people who tend to overhype certain situations.
Mm.
And, I don't want to point any fingers. In fact, I'm talking in general, um, overall.
Well,
I'm
this
not
this
talking
goes
about
to
any
Carl's
specific.
question. Carl had asked, he said, I noticed you posting numerous drone
There we go.
designs and pics lately. Are you leaning towards this hypothesis or suggesting keeping all options on the table? Um, Lately, there have been a series of photos and videos that have been published and spoken about in very glorified terms and descriptions. And perhaps it's because I work with drones and with the government. But to me, my personal opinion, and only my personal opinion, there has been nothing that I have seen in these videos or photographs that cannot be attributed to conventional aircraft. I've not seen maybe more than two of the five observables in any of these things. Um, so my brain goes directly to conventional aircraft, or at least objects that are flying in ways that replicate conventional processes. So, one of the things that I am hammering and hammering and hammering on is data, absolute need for data. So, what I've been doing over the past few days is posting a series of photographs and images of drones, military drones, uh, from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and as recent as the early 2000s. These are aircraft that are absolutely 100% in ours or in our enemies' inventories, and they are unclassified. And you can find these on Google, and you can look these up yourselves. But whenever somebody says that a craft displayed this characteristic or flew in this manner. And if it's not hypersonic, or I mean, if it's not instant acceleration or disappearing in the blink of an eye, what I'm doing is I'm finding inventoried technology that is capable of doing the exact same thing or looking the same way, because I think it's absolutely necessary that we approach this with critical thinking. And I've said it dozens of times. Said it dozens of times that not everything is a UAP, but at the same time, not everything isn't a UAP. So if we walk into this believing hand over fist that everything that we see in the night sky is absolutely 100% a UFO, we've lost, because then we've accepted everything as being unexplainable to us. And we've lost our ability to do any critical thinking, and we will not understand what is actually happening. The United States, Canada, Russia, Japan, China, Israel, those countries have technology that the vast majority of people do not comprehend. It doesn't mean that they can fly 90-degree angles at hypersonic or transonic velocities. It doesn't mean that it can go from 0 to a million miles an hour in a blink of a second. It just means that they look, act, and sound unlike anything that we are accustomed to. And by showing technology that was active or is active in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s that you have never seen before, it may trigger your gray matter to say, well, all I saw on this video was a luminous triangle on night vision that was slowly flying. Well, that could have been any one of these pictures, not necessarily has to be a UAP. I just want people to apply critical thinking.
I haven't done any. I haven't looked into it myself, but there was something about a pyramid craft that was spotted recently. I think it was on a night vision.
Yeah,
What did you look into that at all?
I did. I did. I looked at it a lot, a lot. Um, what I saw could be attributed to plain old domestic tech. It had strobes on the corners. Our aircraft have strobes on the corners. Maybe it's mimicking an aircraft. Maybe it manifested as an aircraft. But what I saw was definitively attributable to a domestic, not a domestic, but a terrestrial created aircraft, whether it be us or Israel or Canada or China or whomever, I do not know. Not enough information was in that video. Um, what I can say is that there was a series of, I'm going to get beaten up for this, Andrew. My Twitter is going to explode. But there was a series of missteps that occurred with the release and advertising of that video. It was billed as one of the biggest things that is ever going to happen in this week in ufology. And then the confirmation when the Navy comes out and says that this video was taken by naval personnel. There's two things that the Navy said. The first one, that the video was genuine and it was taken by naval personnel. Everybody jumps on this and everybody says, oh, this is confirmation that the Navy took this video. So therefore, the Navy doesn't know what it is in the video. No, that's not what the Navy said. The Navy said this video was taken by naval personnel. They did not list the ratings. They did not list the position. They did not say if these guys were on active duty or if they were drunk hanging over the balcony or the railing of the aircraft carrier. They could have been guys off duty just joking and smoking. We don't know who took the video or why they took the video, only that it was confirmed that Navy personnel took the video. We have no other understanding of it. But everybody jumps on the fact that that's confirmation. It's not. We don't get anything from that. But it was also billed and advertised as confirmation, which feeds back into this hype, and it doesn't do critical thinking any justice. The second thing that occurred is that the Navy said that the video was part of an investigation and that the UAPTF was looking into this. Everybody jumps on it then again, saying, well, that's confirmation that nobody knows what it is. Well, that's not the case. That is absolutely not the case. It could have been part of an investigation because maybe these guys that were joking and smoking and hanging over the railing of an aircraft carrier using equipment that they shouldn't have been using, they're being investigated for misconduct. That's an investigation. It could have been that we are testing the Snoopy team's ability to see, respond, and identify and describe. That's an investigation. We could be testing the reporting structure and how information goes from guys on deck from an aircraft carrier with night vision goggles and a notepad all the way to UAPTF. That's an investigation. They never said what was being investigated or why it was being investigated. But everybody jumps on this as confirmation, and that is confirmation bias. We have to be careful in how we interpret the words of the government, because the government does not insinuate anything. They say 1 + 1 = 2. The video was taken by Navy personnel. We asked, was this taken by Navy? They didn't say it was taken at the authorization of the Navy. They said it was taken by Navy personnel. We asked, was it part of an investigation? They said yes. They didn't say what the investigation was or why it was under investigation or what was being investigated. They just confirmed that it was part of an investigation. We need to be smarter and learn how to ask the correct questions.
Good answer. And we could drill down on that a lot more, but I don't think we need to, because we talked about it a little bit earlier, and it's just a matter of people need to use logical thinking when they're approaching this topic.
Yes.
And if they would use logical thinking and not jump to conclusions and really look at what's being said and what's being presented and how it's being presented, and don't buy into what somebody else is telling you that it is.
Yes.
That's the most important thing. Find your own answers and draw your own conclusions if you can.
Yeah.
You know, I
And
mean, very few people actually have conclusive um, ideas about this topic.
yeah. And I want to clarify that I am not saying that this was not a UAP. I am simply saying that we do not have the information to make the call.
There was a couple of questions dropped a little bit earlier in the discussion that kind of relevant to this. So I'm going to try to backtrack a little bit. Um, Preston Paget says, if this is not a non-human technology, what do you think the motive of the DoD would be and the reasoning for secrecy? And that's a great question.
If this is not a non-human technology, so if this is not a legitimate UAP, what do you think the motive of the DoD would be and the reasons for keeping secrecy? Technological superiority. We don't want to give our enemies the understanding of what our capabilities are. At the same time, if it's not ours, we don't want the enemy to understand that we missed it.
Good point. There was one other question. I can't remember who posted it, but the question was, what do you want the UAP to be?
I don't care. I just want to know what it is. There. I don't want it to be anything except what it is. But I want to know what that is.
Yeah. And then there was another question a little bit closer to that about, sorry guys, I'm just going through all these posts. You guys are
I
active.
think this is probably one of the most this podcast has had the most questions of anyone that I've been involved with. This is fantastic, guys.
Yeah, and I am super happy about it, but I can't find this question right now.
Oh, there's a guy. Okay, Photo 7 says he's been on carriers and we fly almost 22 hours a day to get all pilots' qualifications up to date. So
There we go.
Photo 7 would know what I'm talking about or be able to confirm or dispute the fact that the Navy investigation on the video may be because the video was taken, not what was on the video. So there you go. And the answer is yep.
Um, yep, and he says he agrees. Uh, so, all right. So instead of boring everybody with me scrolling through questions, we're just going to move on from that point because I think we've made the point quite clear. We've talked about it a couple of times, and I don't want to, I don't want to beat that anymore. I really want to get to, since we're already at a little bit over an hour for the last 20 or 30 minutes. I want to talk about the state of the UFO Disclosure Movement
Mm,
because there's a lot of things going on with that. One of them is what you mentioned earlier with the SCU dropping that big press release.
yep.
How many members signed that?
God, don't kill me for being wrong on this. I think it was like 55.
Yeah.
Most of which had master's degrees or PhDs or were otherwise involved in the intelligence community or scientific or academia. So it's a lot of heavyweights that signed that letter that went to the Senate Select Committee for Intelligence.
So that is among several other moments, or yeah, I guess you could say moments that are somewhat unprecedented in this UFO disclosure topic,
Mhm.
right? We've had people at high levels of government, both past and present, coming forward and talking about the topic in a way that you've never heard before.
Sure.
I'm talking about John Ratcliffe,
Mhm.
former DNI, and what he said about it. I don't have the specific quote, but he said something like,
They'll be difficult to explain.
"Yeah, yeah, that exactly." Um, Marco Rubio has been talking about it again, and he's been talking about it for quite a while.
Yep.
Recently, Robert James Woolsey, former CIA director, came
Mhm.
out and talked about it. Wrote a book. I don't know if any of that is in the book specifically, but he did talk about it on John Greenwald's podcast. And then Admiral Michael Gilday, I don't know if I pronounced that name correctly, but he
Mhm.
said something about the drones.
Yeah, he's the current head honcho over there.
Okay, and he was talking about the drones, and he said that they're still unidentified. Now, again, that could mean that it's not something that is in our inventory or in.
Well, let me explain something about that. We're talking
But
about the objects that were hovering around, I believe, the USS Kidd.
yes, I
Uh,
think that's right.
so you've got the top brass of the Navy calling them drones. This is very telling in a couple different ways. One, they're not calling them UAP; they are calling them drones. UAP is a term that I believe was coined by the ONI or a department that was working with the Navy. So for the Navy not to use their own terminology, that's pretty telling. Um, the second thing, everybody is asking me on record or off record, well, if all these were drones, how come we didn't shoot them down? Well, first off, that's an act of war, and you don't shoot something that's unarmed unless there's a damn good reason to do it. Um, just like a police officer doesn't, well, bad example, police officers shouldn't shoot unarmed people. Um, the difference being, we don't shoot things down that we still are studying. They might be studying us, but there's a very limited payload that you can put on these drones, especially if they're swarming. And they're swarming because they're so small that they can't carry good sensor tech. So, and remember, I write technical papers for drones. If you're going to have a drone swarm, a nuclear carrier, or a strike group, it's because these drones are too small to carry a vast majority of the sensors. So you have to have a lot of those drones out there recording different things. At the same time, our technology on board the ship is doing ELINT and MASSINT and signals intelligence on those objects. We want to know what's on board those drones. We are going to allow them to fly around our carrier. We're going to take precautions. We're going to go into communications quiet mode where we shut down certain critical systems and we don't broadcast on certain frequencies and we stop using certain codes and signals that we normally would be. We go quiet, but we allow them to circle, we allow them to fly, and we use our sensor tech to study what the hell they have. So we're not going to shoot them down because we want to know what their capabilities are. This is basic counterintelligence 101. Find out what the enemy knows about you or what the enemy can know about you by studying them while they study you.
Okay, we just turned this podcast into a spycraft discussion, and couldn't be happier. Because you know me, man. My interest is in the Cold War era,
Yeah.
and it's simply what you were describing right now is simply an advanced version of spy versus spy back
That's
from the
all
Cold
it
War
is.
era. Yeah,
That's all it is. I mean, you've got the Navy saying drones, not their own coined term of UAP. And you've got them showing up, and we're not taking any adversarial action against them because we're studying them. We want to know what they could know. That's
if I could just put one little spin on it, I would equate that to when when the police find a drug dealer, they don't arrest him, put him in jail, and throw away the keys.
no.
They turn him and have
He's an
him go after
informant.
the bigger fish. This is
Absolutely.
exactly what they were doing with these, or could have been doing with these drones. So great explanation. Again, you're probably going to catch some heat for that,
Oh, absolutely. Because
but
there's going to be somebody somewhere that says that somebody on deck manifested glowing orbs.
well, that I don't know anything about, and in fact, I know very little about that incident. I don't study these incidents the way that a lot of other people do. Um, I have like peripheral knowledge of these things. They're interesting, so I bring people like you on to talk about them, and that's where I get my information from. Um, and it, and then I might bring an opposing, a party to come on
Sure.
here and talk about it and get a different perspective on it. Um, but I don't make a decision based on one point of data.
None of us should.
Yeah,
None of us
exactly,
should. And
exactly.
we should never, going back to beat the dead horse, we should never hype the data that we do have.
Agreed, agreed. So with that, what I was getting at though is that these top level um, people in government and the military are talking about this stuff a lot more openly
Mhm.
than ever before at any point in history. And with this June 24th deadline creeping up, and we know that deadline's probably going to get pushed, there may be something out around that time. No, you don't think so at all?
A, a, an official memorandum of excuse might come out
Possibly,
around
yeah.
there too.
They're going to have to say something like, "Yeah, we're officially requesting an extension of 60 or 90 or six
Due
months."
to COVID, we are no longer able to produce our timeline.
But that said, are you optimistic that there is going to be, and especially considering with this disclosure movement, where the grassroots effort of people getting in contact with Congress and organizations like the SCU submitting requests to Congress to have more of this information become transparent for the community to investigate.
I think that what people like Luis Jimenez is doing with the big phone home is absolutely vital to being able to push this conversation forward. I think the vast majority of our politicians are listening. They're going to be listening a whole lot more here very shortly, come April 24th. Um, but I also think that our politicians are in a very, very difficult spot. Now, you've got the Senate Select Committee for Intelligence, Marco Rubio and Mark Warner, that are pressuring ONI and UAPTF to put out this report. Um, but here's the thing: internally in our own military, the UAPTF has been said that the UAPTF is being stonewalled. And this is military against military. This is the same color hat telling, a blue hat telling a blue hat to go get bent. I'm not giving you the information. That's occurring inside of our military. Our politicians are there for 4 years. If they're lucky, 8 or 16. In very rare cases, they're there like Senator Byrd was for 45 years or something. But there's high turnover in our politicians. Our intelligence community does not trust politicians because our politicians, by design, are the guys that ran the shoe store down the corner and got elected into office. And then they leave office and they become the manager of their shoe store again. These guys are not going to be told what our super secrets are. It's just not going to happen. If we're stonewalling our own people inside of the military, we are going to be stonewalling our politicians. And our politicians are the ones that are supposedly getting us the answers. I don't believe this report is going to have anything of significance that you and I and John Q. Public are going to be able to digest.
Okay, and that said, are you optimistic about going forward?
What do you mean by that?
Sorry, I choked on my words right there. I was trying to articulate that at the same time. But so with this grassroots effort, this is just the first batch or first wave of of communication from the general public
Hmm.
and organizations like the SCU to the Congress. Um, we're not expecting much out of it.
No.
But in years to come, this effort is going to continue to grow. The momentum is going to continue to swell, and the hope is that by eventually a couple of years from now, maybe 5 years or hopefully not longer than that, but there's going to be enough momentum, enough interest from the public that Congress is not going to have a choice. They're going to have to make some kind of a concession to the people.
Well, I think we have to look at this as a multifaceted battlefront, a war on many different front lines. We need things like the big phone home. We need to have constant pressure on our elected representatives, who in turn present that constant pressure to our unelected military leadership. But at the same time, we, we need to we need to motivate our politicians to fight that battle for us. And then we need to turn our efforts, after motivating our politicians, we need to turn our efforts inwards to doing things that is going to allow citizens to go out and capture their own data. We need our own army of information warriors to go out there with sensor stacks and SkyHubs and UFO DAP sensors and magnetometers and whatever else. People are geniuses. People can build anything. And we need these people to go out and start collecting this data and presenting it to organizations like the SCU to become peer reviewed, because I really don't think we're going to get honest disclosure from our government because of their own internal bickering and stonewalling. I think that we, as a united front of citizen scientists, could potentially provide disclosure to the government.
That's exactly where I'm coming from, man. And you said it very well, and I appreciate you doing that, Jeremy. A couple more questions, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this up because I don't want to keep you here too late. It's a Monday night, and you know it's dinner time, so for you at least.
No worries, no worries.
Um, question from Luis: is the intelligence community intentionally muddying the waters by confirming these objects? Very good question.
Ooh, okay. So I'm going to Google something really quick just to confirm what I'm about to say. Um, yes. um, you
That's the
look at
short
things
answer, right?
you look at things that the United States government has done in the past, or any government has done in the past, and we run psyop operations on a daily basis on everything, everything. We run game theory on our own people. We socially engineer uh, desired outcomes. We run simulations on crowd movements and behavior patterns. And this is no different. We gather data in any single way that we can gather the data. Now, I don't know if it's intentionally muddying the waters, if that's the rationale that is allowing them to go forward and do this, if that's the why behind it, but that's certainly a result.
Rodrigo Vieira says Muddying Waters is a great name for a band. And it happens to be the name of a blues
Yeah,
musician from, I think,
Muddy
the
Waters.
40, right?
Yeah,
Muddy Waters. He probably knew that, and that was a joke. But blues is my favorite music, so had to mention that one. Um, what is this? Are you getting strong indication that they both feel something's coming? What do you think of this? This we talked a little bit about this, and the thing that's coming may fizzle out before we actually get to that point.
it's very rare that a former head of an intelligence agency promotes something without having a personal vested financial interest in it. I would challenge people to go back through history and find out when the last time deputy director of the CIA said something that was so profound, but didn't within the following 6 months, 8 months, have a book that came out.
Yeah, good point, man. You're hitting on all cylinders tonight, Jeremy. Um, Great answers, great questions from the chat room. One more comment from Luis. And Luis, if you are still there and you'd like to come in and give a big fat plug to the Big Phone Home, I'd be happy to send you the link.
Absolutely.
And yeah, if you're cool with that too, Jeremy.
Yeah.
But anyway, Luis says maybe we can ask for a subsidy for people to buy SkyHubs to collect data for the SCU and intelligence communities. And I think that's a fantastic idea. Um, it may be too big of an ask right now because I think we're a little bit overextended because of all of the what are the checks that everybody's been getting? The
Oh, the stimulus checks.
stimulus checks, yeah. So
Well, SkyHub is a nonprofit, and they have filed for their 501c3 status. The IRS, as far as I know, is processing the request, but very soon, SkyHub will be able to take tax deductible donations. So, what I would encourage, obviously, your listeners are extremely well off. They wear tuxedos while sleeping, and they have a tremendous amount of pocket money that they can burn. Is just to go to skyhub.org and make a donation and help them develop more code and develop more equipment and develop more technology that folks like me can then go out and purchase out of our own pocket and try to build these systems.
so I just sent you that link on Twitter, Luis. Why don't you, when you get a chance to hit on that and jump on in here and we'll talk. We'll finish it out by talking about the Big Phone Home and try to encourage everybody to go out and encourage everybody that they know to participate. And
Yeah, we can't, just because we don't trust our government, we can't, and I'm not speaking for everybody. I just looking at things from a historical perspective. We can't ignore them either because they are the harbingers of information. Um, but I don't feel that we're ever going to get it from them. not within our lifetime, and not verifiably, and not replicatably. Um, so I think the onus is on us to go out and get the data ourselves.
Definitely.
And yes, Jason, you absolutely need to go out and get your SkyHub built.
Yeah, absolutely. And while we're waiting on Lou to jump in here, oh, here he comes. Jeremy, do you want to talk a little bit real quick about that article? I don't want to get in too much depth on that, but the one about Canada having a UFO.
Oh yeah, there was an article that came out in Vice today, I think it was, where Vice, Luis,
Hey,
What's up,
boys.
Luis?
where Vice broke a story that the Canadian government, in conjunction with NORAD, has an active and very apparently responsive UAP alerting network that incorporates its military and its entire civilian aircraft fleet, um, to to give pilots and give a way of reporting UAP. We built NORAD and we don't have this.
Yeah, it's a. I don't know if that was the right link. Nope, it wasn't. I was going to share the link, but hey, welcome, Lou.
Hey,
How's it
thanks,
going,
guys.
brother?
Yeah, man. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah,
Yeah, man.
appreciate you
Uh,
being on the chat and being patient to.
yeah, dude, this has been a great show.
Thank you, man.
This has been a fun show to
Well,
sit back and watch. You got a lot of people in the chat here interacting. That's great, man. Congratulations.
yeah, big props to Jeremy,
Oh, and
man.
hey,
He's
by the way,
full of information.
if you're in this room and you're being recorded right now by a camera, raise your hand if you were in a magazine for the first time ever.
Not me.
The digital one.
I wasn't into it. Oh yeah.
You were.
Okay,
Yeah, you were.
I got a
Yeah, you
little
were.
plug in there.
You got a little plug in there. I thought that was fun.
Yeah, that was awesome. Um,
Sorry,
so
my girlfriend's having a meeting right now for work. She was like, so if you hear her, that's why.
oh, party at Lou's house.
Yep, exactly.
There you go.
Right on. Yeah, no, I was just saying that Jeremy is just a wealth of information, man, and he looks at it from a very pragmatic standpoint. You know,
Yeah.
he doesn't jump to conclusions like we talked about, and it's where the UFO community needs to gravitate to.
I couldn't agree more. I loved all of the tweets that Jeremy's been putting out about the drones. I get a kick out of them because I know it rubs people the wrong way, and they automatically think, "Oh, well, Jeremy must not believe." It's like, no, like that's not it at all. We're just trying to be rational about this.
If we don't cut out the noise, we'll never get to the truth.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Absolutely. So I just posted that link, and for anybody who wants to go read that article that Jeremy was talking about.
Yeah, it's fun, man. It's yeah. There was a lot of cool stuff in that magazine. I definitely recommend checking out Shadows of Your Mind.
For sure,
It's
Shadows
a
of Your Mind is
fun
great.
article.
No, the article I was talking about is the Canadian.
The Vice
military.
magazine. Yeah, got it.
Yeah, Vice magazine.
Now, where is Vice getting this? I mean, we've got George Knapp, we've got Jeremy Corbell, we've got all these major UFO journalists. The debrief is hitting the UFO, even though they're not UFO centric. They are certainly making a plug in ripples in the UFO world. And then out of nowhere comes Vice.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell are we missing? Where are they sourcing this from, and why is our community not the ones that are keying in on this information?
That's a good point. But I would argue that Vice motherboard has always been on the edge.
Yeah.
They've always
Absolutely.
been. Yeah, they've always.
Well, I would encourage if anybody from Vice or if anybody from Motherboard and anybody that has connections there is listening to this, reach out to those guys and have them contact Andrew, have them contact Luis, have them contact me, because we need their abilities to really push this forward. I mean, Luis, can you imagine Vice talking about the big phone home?
Oh, that'd be killer.
Yeah,
that would be killer. And I think that's this first year we've got goals and expectations, and yes, that would be wonderful. I think the goal for this year is to just try and be as successful as we can and actually try and motivate people to call. And I think if it's successful this year, which I have a feeling it will be, we're really getting some good traction. Then next year, once it's legit, once people know what this is, I think a lot of folks especially in intelligence communities, and rightfully so. I think they're really hesitant to just be like, "Yeah, let's do it," because they've never seen it before. Nobody's ever
Yeah.
done anything like this before, and so I think a lot of folks want to sit back and watch this first train wreck, see what happens, if it is a train wreck, or if it's something that actually promotes more transparency and more information and more data.
Yeah.
I mean, when we've got guys like Jeremy McGowan, and we've got guys, like Robert Powell, from the SCU, and I'm talking to Mick West tomorrow. I would love to get Mick West on this, and have him engage his government for more data, because I don't think even Mick West can argue, no, we don't need any more data,
No.
And to have real scientific rational conversations and engaging our government in the exact same way. Like, I loved the idea of asking for a subsidy came from this conversation. That's something that I agree with you, Andrew. We can't do that this year. That's asking way too much. But
Yeah.
next year, I think that's a great ask, like, hey,
Absolutely.
can we get a subsidy for people who are spending their money to give you more data? I think that's a pretty reasonable ask. And if the government set aside, I don't know, $2 or $3 million for people to buy SkyHubs, I think that would be a massive help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Jeremy's going. I'm
Look
getting
at
my
his-
application in today.
and I think, especially, and I love Jeremy's angle, because Jeremy makes the Osiris trips a family thing, which is a great, it's
Absolutely.
not an angle. I don't want to call it an angle, but
Yeah.
it's a great sort of way to promote this kind of activity. Hey, how would you like to go camping with your kids and also be scientifically active?
So
You know?
many people that start researching this, they go down the rabbit hole and
Mhm.
they lose a lot of their own humanity because they are so sucked into this, and they start ignoring, they forget to brush their teeth and comb their hair and play with their kids. And
Right.
if you start getting your family involved in this, not only are you introducing a younger generation to being able to question things, but you're involving them in something that you're passionate about, and they're going to see your level of commitment and your enthusiasm for something, and that's going to affect them for the rest of their life. So
Yep.
don't ignore your kids, bring them with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, if anybody else has kids, I would like to plug Robert Powell's book, and I can't remember the name of it, but he was on this podcast a couple months ago. He had written a book for children, uh, said ages like 7 to 15, but he said that the parents who were reading it were also
Liking it, I'm sure.
loved it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because it's approachable. It's not pretentious. It's also not. I'm sure, I've never seen the book. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm forgetting the name of it too, but I wouldn't imagine it takes that long to read, and it's probably packed with information.
oh
and
yeah.
and it probably is also packed with a lot of question marks.
The truth about UFOs, a scientific. I can't read the whole title, but it's a scientific perspective by Robert Powell. It's available on Amazon. So, and if anybody doesn't know who Robert Powell is, he's one of the founding members of the SCU, which we've been talking about all night.
Yeah, which, by
Um,
the way, is joining us for the Bigfoot Home. They're not endorsing it. They're showing up as individuals, talking about the topic, and
Yeah.
scientifically engaging people to engage their governments. So I
awesome.
just want to be clear on that.
All right. Very cool.
I'm
Very
glad
cool.
that worked out, by the way.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Yeah. And by the way, Jeremy, Jeremy's this guy does so much stuff behind the scenes, and I just love, also, he'll reach out privately to me sometimes and be like, "Hey, have you seen this? Check this
Yeah.
out."
Yeah.
Or oh, you need to talk to somebody at the SCU? Yeah, you got it. No worries. Here, let me introduce you. And it's so he's been an unexpected, amazing resource and person to lean on, especially anytime I have questions, or I'm like feeling kind of iffy about going forward with something. He's a good guy to sort of bounce those things off of. So
I give the best bad advice ever.
yeah, yeah, no, it's good stuff. It's good
Yeah.
stuff.
Um, So, anything else you'd like to say about the big phone home, Lou?
Well,
Where can
first of
people
all,
find out about it? When is it going to happen? And
well,
that kind of
Andrew,
stuff.
thank you for always being open and cool to invite me to conversations like this, especially in the middle of a guest's time here. But go to the website www.thebigphonehome.com. Go if the bigphonehome.com is a little too difficult for you to use or it's just too time consuming, I totally understand. Go to uapactnow.com and use their letter and their call list and their tweet list. And if that is not easy enough for you, which I think that's probably the easiest out of the three, just like we just talked about, the SCU has also just put out a letter of requests and recommendations for our government, and and I think we've got a really fancy tool belt to be successful on April 24th. We're going to be streaming from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Michael Mataluni from the Debrief is going to be co-hosting with me. We're making the guest list right now. We have about 50 guests lined up, as you can see. We're download the list. It'll always prompt you to download the list, which you should do. We've gotten our script and our what I'm calling a UAP request script. Um, and it can be customizable. You can ask for, you can put whatever you want, make it yours, make it in your voice, your request. It's your request, make it in your voice. So that's what we're encouraging. We're going to be doing some videos this week on my channel showing how to call Congress, what to say it, how to interact with them so that you can be as successful as possible. I mean, you don't really have to worry about that on the 24th, I don't think, because I think you're going to be mainly leaving voicemails. But I love the idea of our representatives coming in on Monday to packed voicemail boxes, and their aides and helpers just having to write down all these messages and hopefully, hopefully bring some more eyeballs to this report, and I think, I think the best thing we should be doing is asking for an extension because government always needs extensions. But in the meantime, we should also ask for a preliminary report while we give them that extension. Let's see what you got right now, and
Yeah.
we'll give you another 180 days to coordinate and get this thing done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's absolutely no reason whatsoever to get a blank page
Right.
at the 180-day mark. They've done something.
Hmm.
Um, and just keep in mind that the UAPTF report is not necessarily about what they know,
Hmm.
but it's about the process of finding out. So it's already done. They have policies, they have procedures, they have marching orders.
Right.
All they have to do is open up their SOPs and say, this is what we do when this happens. It's a giant if then that statement.
Right.
We can get that. We can
Yeah.
get that now.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also not very difficult to get an extension as well. The only person that needs to approve an extension is Marco Rubio. So if we could hit up Marco Rubio and really ask him and request, hey, we want another 180 days. We want these intelligence agencies to get that. I think it would not be very difficult because this guy is already very familiar with the topic, as everyone is aware. He's interested in it, and he's also laid the foundation and the playbook for every other politician to follow on how to talk about this topic. We made a video about this. My favorite video of his so far is that TMZ interview, because that interviewer is not a polished reporter. He's just a schmo. He's part of the paparazzi. So the questions that he's asking are questions that I think a lot of average citizens would ask, and the way he handles it is perfection. It takes all the woo-woo, all the stigma right out of the room, even though he's addressing it, which is beautiful too. He addresses the alien question. He addresses the theory of it, but he always brings it back to, we don't know. And that's the issue. We don't know.
Yeah.
Luis looks like a groovy dude. Yes, he does. He is
I'm a
very
lot groovier than you think, man.
Andrew, can you bring back up the Big Phone Home webpage for a second?
Definitely.
I just want to point something out here.
Yeah.
That's Luis's hair without a hoodie.
Yeah. Oh man, no, dude. This is quarantine right here, man.
Wow.
This hoodie is to keep things under control.
Looks like you got enough hair for a man bun there.
I do. This is the longest my hair's ever been in my entire life, and I'm trying to figure out, do I want to continue with this? Because I think there's a lot of men my age who look at my hair and go, damn, man, I wish I could do that. So, I'm kind of like vicariously, living their dreams for them.
So let's.
I'm gonna get a history or a moniker for calling people out on live videos, because I did that to Chrissy the other day with her
That's right.
microphone, and now I'm giving you crap about your hair.
Oh,
So
it's funny, man.
nobody's ever gonna invite me on their podcast.
No, never change. I think it's hilarious.
So let's see. All good stuff.
Oh,
Is
and
there
hey, by the
anything?
way, Andrew,
Yeah,
now that you've got some real good interaction this episode,
definitely.
it's
Yeah,
pretty difficult to host the show, listen to questions, listen to answers, and also, type away and try and figure out questions, right? Like,
absolutely.
dude, we need producers, man.
Now you know
You
why
know?
Howard Stern has Robin behind the glass.
Right.
Yeah. And Jeremy was over there keeping up with the chats and calling out questions and stuff.
He
That was
always
great, by the way.
he always anytime he's on my show, he does the same thing. I'm like, how are you doing that, man?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he's good at his job.
Yeah. All right, we're just goofing a little bit now, guys. But any last thoughts, Lou, before you head out?
Subscribe to the channel, ring the bell. Join us for the big phone home. That's it. Yeah, just activate yourself. If you want to see more information, it's on you. It's look in the mirror time. These guys, everyone in the intelligence community has done as much work as they possibly can behind the scenes, and talking to senators and briefings and yada yada yada. The list goes on and on. They've done as much as they can. If the citizens aren't asking for it, they're not going to give it to us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, honestly, we've never had an opportunity like this ever.
Yeah.
So let's just take the 20, 30 minutes, hour, maybe even 10 hours out of the day and just make some calls. Call. Start with your state and local representatives, then move on to your senator, and then move on to our congressional lists, or excuse me, our senatorial committee lists, which has 6 committees and subcommittees, and all of those people have a direct or indirect knowledge of the UAP topic, and those are the folks who really need to focus on.
Yeah.
So, sorry, that's a long-winded answer, but
No, it's perfect, man.
it's time to activate. It's time. This is on us now.
I love the word that you used, activate. That's a perfect word, and that's exactly what Jeremy and I were talking about earlier. Activate, and go out there and do something. Don't just depend on somebody else to give you that answer.
Yeah.
You know,
And
go
if you're
out
not
there
a caller, that's totally understandable. Tweet, email, write. There are so many other ways that you can contact. If you live outside of the country, you're allowed to tweet our representatives. There's nothing that says you can't. So go for it. And tweet and interact with your government as well. It's important. I mean, we got a lot of guys on the UK that are doing this on the exact same day we are. So the UK Parliament is going to be getting phone calls and emails and letters at the same time that the US government is. I mean, who knows, man? Who knows?
One question I have for you both, and for any of the listeners out there right now, we know, or at least I know, how to file a FOIA request to the United States government. I would love to see somebody like John Greenwald or whomever on their website post not only how to do it with our government, but how to file, the official Secrets Acts exemptions with Canada or the UK, or how to do the same thing with Israel. Any government should have a process by which a citizen can request information on an otherwise taboo topic. And I think there should be a site that you can go to figure out how to do that. So there's a challenge for anybody listening. Let me know how to request information from Israel. There's something I want to see.
That's a great idea. It's a
Yeah,
great
very,
idea.
very
And
good idea.
just to answer that question, I have no idea how to fill out a FOIA request. Never done it. I've never done it.
I did it one time, and I actually got a response, which was super cool. But they basically told me, "You're barking up the wrong tree here, pal. Go somewhere else."
Yeah. Well, hey, man. But if you send them, I think the thing with FOIA requests, and it's probably with anything, it's true with anything in life, persistence. If you send them, I mean, they can only tell you to bark up the tree so many times. I mean, if you keep sending that letter once a month for, I don't know, 10 years, who knows? Like you were talking about before, the turnover in politicians, you might get somebody who fills that chair and has a different perspective, and says, all right, yeah, I'll approve this request.
Sure.
But I think it's important, and that would be something really nice for at least me to focus on for the next big phone home is how to fill out a FOIA request,
Yeah.
how to request data, how to do it, what specifically should you ask for. I think
Where
all of those things,
where to
Yeah,
send
submit.
it,
and this goes back to a point that I had earlier. We need to learn how to ask the questions
right,
properly to get the
Exactly.
answers that we're actually looking for. We don't need to ask, is this being investigated? Because that is so broad, and any answer to the yes is confirmation bias on my part. Yes, it's being investigated. And we're like, ooh, wow, it's being
right,
investigated.
right,
Must be true then. No, it just
right.
means it's being investigated, but we don't
Yeah.
know why. So we have to be able to figure out how to submit these FOIA requests in a way that there is no wiggle room on the back end.
Yeah. I will
Yeah.
also say, to the entire community as a whole, I know it's super exciting sometimes when these things come down the pipe, but I think it'll be better. It'll better serve us if we're very unimpressed by anything they come that they throw down the pipe. If everybody's just like, that's okay. Can we get more? You
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
instead of going, oh my god, this is it. This is the confirmation. It's just like,
Yeah.
is it?
If
Are you
everybody
sure
looked
about
at a
that?
photo and said, hey, nice triangle, show me the data.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. I think we need to start changing the expectations from this side,
Yes.
and sort of act, because we've been to this party for the last 60 years. We know what this party's all about. We've
Yeah.
been to this party. So when something happens inside the party, we should already be sort of ready for it,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't come as a surprise. So that way, there's no overreaction, and then now they're asking, uh-oh, this isn't working anymore. They're
Yeah.
going to really start questioning the information that they're putting out and just be like, oh, nobody got excited about this. Nobody tweeted about this. Nobody retweeted. We didn't have any journalists report on it. Like, why? Well, because the data is not good enough. That's why.
Yeah, I would just like to give another shout out to the chat room today, man. I don't have a list of all your names, but I do recognize Nick Madrid, Undead Gaucho, Rodrigo Vieira,
Yeah.
um,
Carl
Rodrigo,
Anderson.
yeah,
Rodrigo. I
Carl
don't know
Anderson.
how Rodrigo's in Spain, and that man is he is a consumption machine. Any show, any podcast that is doing a live stream or is premiering live, he's there and he's supporting. That is probably
That's amazing.
one of the best supporters of this topic I've ever seen, man. Rodrigo Vieira. I have no clue. Obviously it's a time zone thing, so maybe he could just pop in all these things.
He's a
Uh,
remote viewer, man. He knows
yeah,
it before we
dude,
do.
the dude, or Portugal. Sorry, not Spain. Sorry, Rodrigo. He's in Portugal. The dude he's such a wonderful human, and always shows support to everyone, and always has great questions too. So yeah, you've got some really solid people in this chat tonight.
Yeah. And, just to go along with what you were saying, there are many ways you can contribute to this effort. Just by supporting other channels, by participating in chats, that encourages us, the content creators, the people that are putting out these podcasts, that encourages us to do more of it. So yeah, by all means, watch as many of these things as you can,
Yeah.
participate in those chats, and
And engage.
engage. Yeah, very
Yes.
cool. Very
Ask the
cool.
questions.
This guy's got all the words, man. You got to be a motivational speaker, Lou.
Yeah.
I've said that before.
Oh man.
You got some really interesting perspectives on things.
Hey man.
I should also say that one of the things about this, the hyping and the sensitivity that we're having now about the photos, that's us settling. We're not asking for more. We're taking it on face value. We
Yeah.
should not do that. Do not settle for a grainy photo of something flying that could be anything. Ask for more.
And if you are going to
always
settle,
ask.
make sure it has data, radar. Make sure it has some sort of witness testimony accompanied with it.
If it's a nothing burger, send it back to the chef.
I agree. I agree.
And the best case that I can think of in my mind that fits or checks all those boxes is that Aguadilla case that we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That checks all those boxes. It's got the data. It's got the video, which is a couple minutes long.
just so you guys know, I'm working on something with that case. I've never investigated a historical event before,
Hmm.
but because of something that the SCU was involved in, this and is looking at, and because of an unnamed, I'm not going to say his name, very prolific journalist, not in the UFO world, but a regular, nightly news type of person, is looking into this and asked me a question. I'm kicking over a couple rocks to see what I can turn up with that specific incident.
Nice,
That's
exciting.
another thing I love about you,
Yeah,
Jeremy.
you always dropping
Drop
nuggets like
little,
that.
little nuggets.
Little
Just
information
enough to
nuggets.
keep people. It's not hype, man, because this
Yeah,
guy
no, it's true.
delivers. He
It's
he
true.
always delivers.
Quick question: what would you say? I guess I'll answer this before you guys answer it. I keep prolonging the show, but I just love talking to you guys.
It's cool.
What would you say is the best piece of evidence that you would point at and say you need to pay attention to this? Because I'm gonna say, I think my favorite case ever will be that Japanese airline flight that happened in the
Yes.
80s. The reason why I enjoy that is number one, there's no video, there's no pictures. It's just radar tracking, and it's radar tracking from the tip of the plane, the tower at the airport, and NORAD. you
Hmm.
know, three different radar systems tracking this thing. And the thing that I found the most interesting about that case is what happened to the pilot. He was a Japanese airline pilot, and the shame that
Mhm.
event brought him put him behind a desk for the rest of his career.
Yep.
That to me is one case that I'm going to ask Mick West about, because I don't know if he's looked into that case. Because I would love to hear his explanation of what happened there.
Mhm.
Because in that case, you got the radar tracking information, and it came from the FAA directly. The second guy in charge at the FAA, John Callahan, I believe is his name. So I love that case because the data is so damn good, and there's no pictures or blurry things to be like, to throw people off the data. It's just pure data.
Yeah. So, Jeremy, I'll give you the next uh, opportunity to answer that.
Yeah, for me, it's John Burroughs.
Mm.
It's John Burroughs with the Rendlesham case,
That's
Because
a
of the
good
medical
case.
conditions.
because of the medical conditions and the fact that
Yeah.
he finally got the VA to compensate him for exposure to radiation.
And it took a
Uh,
senator to do that.
and it took a senator to do it. So I think that we have physical evidence, medical diagnosis
Hmm.
to show that this actually happened.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, interesting. I'm gonna drop back on the Aguadilla case because
Yeah.
that's really the only one that, in my opinion, has been well. There are several that have been peer reviewed, but that one just stands out in my mind because it has so much evidence.
That one is sexy. That's
Yeah,
definitely I think that's the sexiest video ever released. If
definitely.
I was gonna get excited about a video, that's one that got me excited. But it only got me excited after I heard the SCU, I believe it was Robert Powell, if I'm not mistaken, break
Yeah,
down that video,
yeah,
Yeah,
and sort of how you can measure it, and what the
yeah,
temperature of it was, and
yep.
how it was moving, and and all of these things. And just like, okay, these are great data
And the
points
thing
that
looks
people are
like
talking about.
George Jetson going to work. I mean,
yeah.
it's an
It's
Yeah.
incredible
something.
video
I mean,
without the
It's
data.
something else.
it's just tough to call that thing a balloon, because it's like, well, why is it heading to sea if it's a balloon? And number two,
Goes in and out of the
can you
water
can
and
you
it
show
splits in
me
two.
footage of a balloon anywhere that can do that?
No,
Yeah. Wait.
Please find it for me.
Is Rodrigo saying that he just worked with John Burroughs? Rodrigo, can you confirm
Okay.
that you're talking about John Burroughs?
A couple things in this case. He just released ah,
If
yeah,
you if
that would be
that's
cool.
who you worked with, we should definitely be talking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
No,
Rodrigo's easy to get in contact with on Twitter. So.
well, the reason I say this is, the story that my experience that I had in Jordan
Mhm.
with what turns out to be the potential nuclear device in the crate, and they're saying, for me not to get close to it and things like that, and I got close to it. I sat on it, I stood on it, I pissed on the crate. I was diagnosed with a form of skin cancer on my inner
Mm.
thigh about 9 or 10 years ago that the VA denied my claim for because
Mhm.
they said it was not connected, it was not service connected. Now it's gone. I had it surgically removed, and it's never come back. But I would very much like to go back to the VA, and if Rodrigo has contact with John Burroughs, I would like to be able to discuss how what the process is that I can take to go back through the VA and refile that claim for radiation exposure.
Mm.
Well, I know he had a hell of a time, John Burroughs. You know, it
Yeah.
wasn't he got zero movement on that until John McCain literally stepped in
Mhm.
and was like, "You need to show us this now."
But now there's precedent, and now
Right.
there's documentation that I can cite saying that this isn't abnormal.
Right. No, it's true. Hmm. Do you think the VA denies a lot of things like that?
Absolutely.
They did at one time. I think they're getting better about it.
Well, I mean, you look at Agent Orange.
Yeah.
That's like it's part of me definitely wants universalized healthcare, but then I look at the VA and I'm like, man, if we can't take care of our veterans, like how are we going to take care of everyone else?
Yeah,
It's tough, man. It's tough. But
Yeah, we don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
no, we
man.
don't want to. But it just made me think, man. Like
I agree.
it's a shame that our veterans get such static from.
Well, that's not even the worst of it. The physical ailments that
Right.
veterans have to deal with are pretty bad, and for them to get denied, but the mental and emotional trauma
Yeah.
they get very little support,
Yeah.
and that's why we have so many veterans end up homeless,
Mhm.
or on suicide watch,
Yep.
Or dead.
or dead. Yep.
Yeah.
And those are unfortunate things, but again, I don't really want to prolong this and talk about that stuff, but
Yeah.
if Rodrigo, if you want to throw your contact info out there for Jeremy to reach out to you, or
Yeah,
if you know
DM me on Twitter if you're watching this still.
you know what, I'm gonna, if you want to stick around, Lou, you're welcome to. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
give Jeremy a chance to throw out all his digits, and then we're gonna close it out.
Yeah, please do. I'm gonna let you guys end this. The two of you guys. Thank you for the invite,
Awesome,
Jeremy.
man.
Wealth
Appreciate
of
you being
knowledge.
here.
Rodrigo, get with Jeremy. Jeremy, get with Rodrigo.
Yeah, man.
I love these conversations. I love spitballing with you guys. Anytime, please.
Awesome, man.
I always love doing this stuff. So, thank you everyone to the chat. Thank you both. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's
Lou.
all.
Appreciate you, brother.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it.
All right, boys.
And guys,
Talk
I
to
am
you
putting my website in the chat room chat box, whatever the hell it's called. You can find me there. You can find me on Twitter. Send me a DM. Send me an email. Whatever you need. I am approachable.
All right,
I
boys.
got
Be
it
good.
up there also. All right, take care, Lou. Let's see.
Andrew, this has been absolutely fantastic.
Oh yeah, I had a blast, man. I always do. I always enjoy having you on the podcast. I always enjoy talking with you, my brother. Um, much success to you on your adventures and your journey. How can what's the Twitter account? Did you put the Twitter out there for people
Well,
to reach out to
it's
you?
right there on the screen where it says tweets, and it's just Jeremy.
Oh, there you go.
Right there, Jeremy Unidenti 1, and I'll put that in the Twitter as well. So my Twitter is at. There you go. That's my Twitter.
Right on.
Has it?
So you guys definitely reach out to Jeremy. He is engaging. He will respond to your tweets, good, bad, or indifferent. He's going to give you his opinion.
There you go. There you go.
He doesn't shy away from it, but awesome conversation.
And I encourage everyone to not listen to me. Do your own research. Make your own opinions.
Absolutely.
Don't be a follower. Don't hang on my every word. Figure it out for yourself.
Absolutely, man. I totally 100% agree with that. Again, I appreciate you all being here. Everybody in the chat room, everybody that posted comments and questions in the chat room. It's been awesome. I think this was the most fun that I've had, the most engaging audience that I've had. And I just really, really appreciate everybody being here, especially hats off to you, Jeremy, for spending so much time and sharing so much knowledge with everybody in the chat.
Always a pleasure, man. Always a pleasure. I appreciate it.
All right, my friend. Well, with that, we will call it a night. I'll go ahead and end the stream, and everybody have a good night. Stay safe, and I don't have a good catchphrase. Do you have a catchphrase, Jeremy?
No, no, I'm not a celebrity. I have no catchphrase. I
All
need a
right, man.
catchphrase. Somebody give me a catchphrase.
We'll work on that, man.
There you go. All right.
Take care.
Enjoy.